Well, hey Gundam fans, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. Today we're continuing that look at the side stories during the One-Year War in Universal Century that were really starting as PS2 games or other video games adapted to manga or other formats, but tell some unique stories and show off some cool neat mobile suits. Hey, but before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe. There's a giveaway going on, link in the description below. But yeah, let's get started. All right, so again, Gundam Lost War Chronicles. So another entry into these side stories during the One-Year War. This was a PS2 game that came out in 2002, so this was a year, nearly a year, right after Zeonic Front, which was talked about previously. I doing these series of videos in order in which I believe either they came out or the order that the G Generation Genesis games have their stories. The purpose of that is just some of the events, while they all kind of occur around the same time, some of them, I guess, were released in a specific order. So I'm kind of covering it that way. But if as I go through these or any in the series, if anyone has any more information about maybe timeline or order, please put it in the comments. I'm trying to get in the habit of pinning comments that have some good information I can add. So like Zeonic Front, Lost War Chronicles is a third-person game. I played a little bit of the PS2 game on an emulator, and I'm actually surprised by how it is. Again, these are tactical, slower-based games. It reminds me of Rise of the Ashes. It reminds me of Zeonic Front. Any of the games I've been able to get a hand on to play, and I really like it. It really does feel like you're in a mobile suit. One thing I would say is the controls are very interesting. Again, I was using an emulator, but the D-pad was for moving the mobile suit, even though it still had the dashing and everything. The left thumbstick just kind of did some looking around, so you'd have to take your finger off the D-pad of moving the Gundam to look around. But otherwise, I really liked the combat. I liked how as you would press the different button for a different weapon type, then there had to be the animation of putting away a weapon or getting a weapon. So it still had that slow, methodical, mobile suit combat experience. Very well done. I feel if once you kind of get over that change of control scheme, and a lot of days, or nowadays, a lot of games have kind of the same control scheme. I think if you get over that, you can really enjoy the game. I even think the graphics are pretty good for being PS2 because there's a lot of detail, even though you can tell everything's kind of lower resed. But again, has a lot of good detail. Now, when it comes to the story, this was adapted into a manga, but I didn't really look too deeply into that. I would love to eventually kind of do a deep dive into the manga itself, but just kind of getting an idea of the story. I would say this is less about kind of the weaponry used. There's not any new specific Gundam in use. In fact, a lot of it are ground type. Things that were seen in 08MS Team, which I am actually currently reviewing also. But there's a focus around the characters and kind of a specific characterization of the two. One from Federation and one from Principality of Zeon. And the character from the Federation, who we'll look into here shortly, he is trying to be kind of like a Batman in a way. You know, the whole idea of not killing anyone, which is pretty crazy, being in the war, being in a mobile suit. He's trying his best to go about the war, stopping the war from happening, stopping battles, trying to talk people out of fighting, trying to making the enemy surrender in any possible scenario. But that's kind of his downfall because that ends up getting one of his allies killed. Now, on the flip side, we have a Zeonic or a Zeon soldier that feels the same way. He doesn't want to lose anyone, except what happens is by losing people in battle, he then kind of goes on a murderous rampage. He enacts revenge. But again, against those that wronged him, but he does not want to have to fight. It's just that's the way he goes about it. So let's kind of dive into these characters. And real quick, before we do that, I just wanted to bring up how there's some cool music that shows up in this. It's a little different than most Mobile Suit Gundam music. Usually you have kind of the Japanese pop songs. You kind of have the theatrical cinematic scores that they have, the military themes. But this kind of has just a kind of a cool chill, I don't know how to explain it, style of music that I think is really cool. It helps to be an identity in a way for this game, for Lost War Chronicles. And it reminds me, whether it's G Generation Genesis or playing the Versus series, when you have a lot of different universes, a lot of times they'll take samples or music from those specific series, whether it's in a game or other media, and they'll use that. And again, it helps build kind of the theme around that specific show. It really gives identity. So one thing I will say is Bandai and Sunrise has done a good job of giving identity to their different stories, their side stories, even though everything's just Gundams and mobile suits and some similar looking characters. There's identity there. So that is cool. All right, first off is Matt Healy. Main guy on the Federation side. Looks very similar to some other characters we've been seeing in the side stories. It could have to do with the time period in which these characters are being drawn or created. I believe in 90s in general, late 90s, stuff like that. Okay, so Matt Healy, he is a gentle, kind-hearted, and sensible soldier who is committed to no killing, regardless of whether he is friend or foe. He wants to help as many people as possible and reduce the number of casualties and more. However, in the manga version of the story, he made an error in judgment in trying to get the enemy to surrender during the defense of Jaburo, and his subordinate Larry Radley was killed as a result, which caused him to clash with his other subordinate, Anish Lothman. In side stories, despite the aforementioned error in judgment, Larry does not die in battle, and this event is the catalyst for him to face reality and renew his resolve and trust in his fellow troops. So, that's a little bit information about the character to kind of see who we're dealing with here. And listen to this. In the novel version, he is so skilled that he completed the MS pilot training course at the top of his class, but he also has a tactician's temperament, and there are times when he adds to or gives advice to the operational proposals of Corporal Noel Anderson, the unit's operator. And so Noel Anderson, the other character here that is unique to Lost War Chronicles. There's always an operator. It tends to be a female character. They can't be stuck in that. But it's still very interesting when they have these dynamics that kind of help move the story forward. Now, again, while I'm not too clear on the whole story in terms of the battle during the One-Year War, some of the gist of it is being part of Operation Odessa. They were a unit that was special forces unit that was sent out for that. And that's, where Garma gets killed. They also had some battles that took place in Canada. So now we're seeing some more of that North American front, which was attacked by Zeon. But really cool to call out the mecha that was piloted here, okay? So typically in these side stories, sometimes we'd have like a new Gundam or new mobile suit or a custom. But for that, he used an RB79G ball work type, which is very cool. I haven't really dived much into it. Just very interesting. It's a ball where it has kind of the third little mandible within the arm structure here, but also has this like kind of arm crane at the top. Work type. So that's very cool to see how we saw with Zeon and they had their work type Zaku's or mobile suits that then later became more of their weapons of war. So he also piloted the RX-79G Gundam ground type. So this was his main mobile suit, and this is a very popular mobile suit from 08th MS Team. And so I guess the idea, I think when I was researching, and it's in my other 08th MS Team video, that 20 of these were created. So 20 of these were created. It would be interesting to get the count to see how many were used during 08th MS Team, and then to see what other ones were out there, because we do see these in some other side stories. And then another cool one, the RGM79G GM ground type. So this is just a GM that's a ground type and has those very unique colors to it. So we could see with Matt Healy, he wasn't really using any unique, specially made Gundam. He was actually just a really skilled pilot, but I think maybe where his uniqueness came in was the fact that he was trying not to get people killed, which is kind of a cool hero to have in a story, someone that's just trying not to get people killed, but maybe that's the edge he got in battle. But on the side of the Principality of Zeon is Ken Benderstadt. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Again, kind of what sounds German or Eastern European, that kind of goes with the designs and the characters that are part of the Principality of Zeon. And something else I want to bring up is that I've been seeing a lot lately with these side stories is that these characters throughout the side stories then appear in Gundam Legacy. It takes place right after the incident with the Delaz fleet, the Zeon remnants. I guess there's that operation, and I forget the name off the top of my head, something that I wanted to look into. He first appeared as an unnamed protagonist for Zeon side of the game before his background and name are established in the manga version. So that's something very interesting to take away, since I have not really played through and completed the Lost War Chronicles on the PS2. I guess they used that character and then kind of built him out in the manga. So curious if then the remake that is in the side stories on PS3 features that. Okay, a little bit of background. A Zeon pilot, Ken is the captain leading the Zeon MS squad featured in the game and in the manga. He is known to have worked for the Colony Public Corporation and was involved with the construction of the Side 3 space colonies. He enters the one-year war as an officer in the Foreign Legion who rose to the rank of lieutenant, leaving behind his only daughter in space, though it is unknown what happened to his wife. Ken has become an ace in the ever-diminishing ranks of the 5th Terrestrial Mobile Division, which is called the Foreign Legion, which is made up of soldiers who aren't official Zeon citizens but volunteered for military service. Because of this, Ken and other Legionnaires are often mocked by regular Zeon military personnel. However, the Legion has become an elite and sturdy force in the Zeon war effort. So very interesting that within the Zeon military ranks, there are those that are not necessarily Zeon citizens, or they're outsiders that maybe just don't side with the Federation, that are willing to fight for Zeon, and they're looked down upon. So you can kind of see how even within Zeon there are people that are looked down upon, and they happen to actually be just very good at what they do, very efficient. So this is when I was talking about that Gundam Legacy, because we could see that he actually goes to Earth with former Midnight Fenrir Corps members, Nikki Roberto and Charlotte Hepner. This is what we talked about in the Zeonic Front video. All right, let's take a look at the mobile suits. Again, nothing too different, unique, or custom compared to what we've seen. All right, so for Ken, one of the mobile suits he piloted is the MS-09B Dom. Very familiar with this. He also piloted the SPW-03 space pod, something else I haven't really looked much into. I do know that Zeon tends to call their version of the ball like a pod. But what's interesting about this, it does look like a ball, really. But again, it looks like it's a worker, civilian use. So that's interesting compared to what we saw just a second ago, I was showing what Matt was piloting. So that's very interesting. If anyone knows details about that, of what they were piloting, what caused them to then pilot these kind of non-weaponry mobile suits or weapons, because it's not really a mobile suit. One thing I do notice is how much it has that like TIE fighter cockpit look. Nothing wrong with that, really. It looks really cool. In fact, this looks like a great, Ver-Ka version of that would be an excellent model kit to have. So that's very cool. And then an MS-06J Zaku 2 ground type. So this is kind of the standard Zaku 2. So obviously we would see during the one-year war, a Zeon pilot would pilot that. And then the MS-14A Gelgoog, again, another cool kind of general mobile suit that we would see very often. And then this MS-14G Gelgoog ground type. So very cool to see that there's this ground type of a Gelgoog, very similar to the fact that there's the ground types of the Gundam. So Zeon is adapting to the war on Earth. And this reminds me, seeing Vish Donahue on here, he had his own custom ground type. Now, this is from a video I did recently, another side story. So we're seeing some cool crossover here, which is good because that's the consistency these side stories happen to have during the one-year war, during Universal Century. Now, as it ends, again, this seemed to be very character-driven to me. We had Matt and Ken. They finally got to the point where they were facing off against each other. We had Matt in his ground Gundam. We had Ken in that ground-type Gelgoog. Now, what happens is they are just fighting each other. And it's really where, Matt doesn't want to have to kill anyone, but he knows that this has to be done. He made that mistake, according to the manga, of him letting one of his teammates get killed by trying to get someone to surrender. But Ken, he's kind of angry of people that he lost during the battle. So they're fighting. Now, what happens is, while they are battling, A radio signal comes into them that the 1 year war has ended. This was, I think it was January 1st of 0080, if I'm not mistaken, or second or third. I forget when it was exactly, but that's when there was that truce between the Federation and Principality of Zeon, become the Republic of Zeon. And they actually then decided not to fight each other, and they stopped. They because they knew they were only doing this because it was called upon them because of, where they lived, where they were at, what they felt they were fighting for. Because again, even if the Zeon or the Federation at top ranks are doing things for nefarious reasons, there are people caught up in it just trying to do the right thing, trying to defend their family, their friends, innocent people. So it's kind of interesting how this story seems to be very much a character-driven one. There really isn't any interesting new mobile suits. It's really just about these two characters caught up, but they're high-ranking ace pilots within the Federation caught up in this stuff, not new types or anything. So I think that's just a very cool story. Again, I will have to play through the game on PS2. There were some graphical glitches I encountered emulating it. So again, just another reason for me to go back and get another PS2 and play the games the way they were intended. So there we go. That's Lost War Chronicles, just another side story within the UC 1 year war timeline. If you have any other information you want to provide, please do so in the comments, or if you want to discuss it on the Discord, there's a link in the description for that. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll talk later.